This painting is breathtaking, but behind its beauty lies obsession, rejection, and collapse. Welcome to Masterpieces Alive. Today, we uncover the story of a masterpiece that nearly ruined the artist who created it. This painting was meant to be his triumph, the culmination of years of work, sacrifice, and raw emotional investment. But the world, it turned out, just wasn't ready. The artist was John Singer Sargent, an American expatriate painter who had conquered Paris. By the 1880s, he was the most sought-after portraitist of his generation, celebrated for his dazzling technique and ability to capture the very essence of his sitters. He was a master of the conventional, the elegant, the acceptable, but Sargent was ambitious. He yearned to create something more, something that would transcend the flattering society portraits he was known for. He wanted to create a masterpiece that would cement his legacy not just as a skilled painter, but as a true visionary artist. He found his muse in a fellow American expatriate, Varadini Amelia Vegno-Gautreau, a woman famous in Parisian high society for her striking, almost statuesque beauty and her scandalous reputation. She was, in many ways, a living work of art. Sargent saw in her an opportunity to create a modern icon, a painting that would be both a portrait and a statement. He spent more than 2 years on this project, a period of intense creative struggle. He made countless preliminary sketches and studies, trying to capture the perfect pose, the perfect light, the perfect attitude. This wasn't a paid commission. It was a personal obsession. He poured his own time, money, and artistic soul into it, convinced that this painting would be his grand entry into the annals of art history. He believed it would be his magnum opus. The painting itself is a marvel of composition and tone. Known today as Mother Mexa depicts Varadini-Gautreau in a sleek black satin dress, her body twisted in an impossibly elegant pose against the stark, minimalist background. Her skin is unnaturally pale, almost luminous, a stark contrast to the deep black of her gown and the rich brown of the background. Her profile is sharp, classical, like a Roman coin, her nose aquiline, her chin held high. Everything about the composition is designed to accentuate her form. The severe lines of the dress, the negative space around her, the way her right arm is tautly stretched back to grip a small tablet S. A symphony of controlled tension. It's a painting that's both cold and sensual, formal and shockingly intimate. Sargent's brushwork is confident, almost audacious. You can feel the texture of the satin, the coolness of her powdered skin. But look closer, and you see the artist's inner turmoil reflected in the work. The ghostly pale skin wasn't just a representation of her fashionable look. It carries an almost death-like quality, hinting at the artificiality and fragility of her social standing. The pose, while graceful, is also deeply unnatural and strained. It speaks of a constant performance, of the pressure to maintain a perfect, untouchable facade. Every brushstroke was a calculated risk. The most daring element, in its original version, was the right shoulder strap of a dress, which Sargent painted as having slipped down her shoulder. It was a subtle detail, but it was electric. It was a cry for recognition of his modern approach, a move away from stiff, academic portraiture, toward something more alive, more real, more daring. For Sargent, this painting was not just art. It was his declaration of independence. It was his survival as a serious artist beyond the realm of flattering commissions. The painting was finally unveiled at the prestigious Paris Salon of 1884. Reaction was not what Sargent had dreamed of. It was a catastrophe. The critics didn't just dislike it, they were outraged. They called it bizarre, grotesque, and indecent. They saw a woman flaunting her vanity, her aristocratic aloofness rendered as cold and repellent. That fallen shoulder strap, that Itel Sargent had seen as a stroke of modern genius, was deemed scandalous, an overt suggestion of immorality. The public jeered. Gautreau's own mother wept in dismay, demanding that the painting be removed from the exhibition, crying, "My daughter is lost." Patrons, who had once lined up to be painted by Sargent, now turned away. His studio, once bustling, fell silent. The scandal was so immense that it effectively destroyed Sargent's career in Paris, the city he had worked so hard to conquer. For Varadini-Gautreau, the subject of the painting, the fallout was equally devastating. The portrait, intended to be a monument to her beauty, became a public symbol of her supposed vanity and moral looseness. She was humiliated, and her social standing was permanently damaged. Sargent was crushed. We can see the emotional toll in his letters from the time. He wrote to a friend, "I suppose it is the best thing I have done," yet he was forced to retreat in the face of overwhelming condemnation. The rejection was absolute. The painting that he had poured his soul into, the work he believed was his masterpiece, became a monument to his failure. It was no longer a symbol of genius, but of miscalculation and public disgrace. In the aftermath of the Ceylon disaster, Sargent withdrew. He repainted the shoulder strap, pulling it back into its proper place, a small act of concession that couldn't undo the damage. Humiliated and creatively wounded, he packed his bags and fled Paris, the city that had built him up and then torn him down. He relocated to London, but his reputation had preceded him. Commissions were slow to come. He was an artist in exile, not by political decree, but by public opinion. For a time, he faced the real prospect of his career being over. The painting itself, Madame X, was returned to his studio. It remained there, hidden from public view for over 30 years. Sargent couldn't bring himself to sell it. It was a constant, painful reminder of his greatest ambition and his most public failure. To him, it was a beautiful, misunderstood ghost. The painting was forgotten by the art world, a footnote in the story of a promising artist's fall from grace. It was a work that was too modern, too bold, too unapologetic for its time. The world had looked at it and seen only scandal, not the revolutionary artistry that lay within. But time has a way of changing everything. What is scandalous in one era can become iconic in the next. The failure of 1884 was not the end of the story. It was merely a long, painful intermission. Decades passed, the world changed, and so did art. The rigid conventions of the 19th century gave way to the radical experiments of modernism. Artists like Matisse and Picasso pushed the boundaries of form and color in ways that made Sargent's Madame X seem almost tame by comparison. In this new context, Sargent's painting was finally seen for what it was. In 1916, a year after Vergani Gautro's death, Sargent sold the painting to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. He asked that the museum disguise the sitter's name, officially titling it Madame X, thus transforming her from a specific person into a universal archetype of elegance and mystery. He wrote to the museum's director, "I suppose it is the best thing I have ever done." This time, the world agreed. Scholars and critics re-evaluated the work, no longer blinded by the scandal of its debut. They saw its brilliance, the masterful technique, the psychological depth, the audacious composition. They recognized it as a pivotal work, a bridge between traditional portraiture and modern art. Museums that once would have rejected it now displayed it with reverence, as a centerpiece of their collections. The artist's pain, his rejection, his despair, all of it became part of the painting's mythos. The story of its failure became inseparable from its ultimate triumph. The wreckage of Sargent's Parisian career became the foundation of his enduring legacy. The painting was no longer a symbol of ruin, but of resilience. Today, our connection to this story is deeper and more analytical than ever before. We can now look beyond the surface and the scandal, thanks to incredible technology. Advanced imaging techniques, like infrared reflectography, allow us to see beneath the final layers of paint. We can see Sargent's original composition, including the notorious fallen strap. We can trace his hesitations and changes, revealing the creative struggle that was once invisible. AI algorithms are now being developed to analyze brushstrokes, attempting to trace the emotional patterns within the artist's hand. Was this stroke made in a moment of confident inspiration, or in one of frustrating doubt? The code can't feel, but it can reveal patterns that our eyes might miss, giving us a new language to discuss the artist's process. Furthermore, digital archives give us unprecedented access to the world in which Sargent worked. We can read his letters, see his preliminary sketches, and browse the scathing reviews from the 1884 Salon, all from a screen. These digital tools reconstruct the artist's world and his process, preserving not just the final masterpiece, but the entire ecosystem of its creation. The painting lives on, not just in the hushed halls of a gallery, but in pixels and code, its story constantly being retold and re-examined. Technology allows the memory of Sargent's struggle and ultimate vindication to be preserved and understood with a clarity he could never have imagined. So what does this story teach us? Art can elevate. It can bring fame and fortune, but it can also destroy. For John Singer Sargent, Madame X was almost the end. It was a work born of immense ambition that led to crushing rejection. He was forced to flee, to rebuild, to find a new path. Yet, in the end, the painting he kept hidden for decades became his most celebrated work. The very thing that nearly ruined him is what made him immortal. Sometimes, the masterpiece is not just the thing that is created. It is the story of survival that surrounds it. The true work of art is born from the wreckage. Thank you for watching Masterpieces Alive. If you believe every brushstroke carries a story, subscribe for more. Like this video, if you are moved by Sargent's journey, and share it with someone who loves art. More revelations await, each one painted in pain and remembered in beauty.